Hey everybody, welcome to section 11.4. This is going to cover installment buying. There are two different types of installment buying. You can do fixed installment loans or you can do open-ended installment loans. And we're going to look at each one and do a couple examples of each so that you can get some experience with both. A fixed installment loan is one which you pay a fixed amount of money for a set number of payments. Things that you'll see do that often are like when you go buy a car. Usually you'll work out a deal where they say you need to pay $250 a month for the next 60 months in order to pay for the car. Usually the lengths of the loan are in months, and the most common lengths of loans of the installment loans are 24, 36, 48, or 60 months. Open-ended installment loans are a loan where you can make a different payment each month if you want to. The most common example where you will encounter that is on credit cards. As long as you make the minimum payment, you get to decide how much of a payment you want to make each month. There is a law and order called the Truth in Lending Act. It was established in 1968. This law requires that the lending institution has to tell the borrower the annual percentage rate and the finance charge. The finance charge is going to be the total amount of money that you have to pay for borrowing the money. So, for example, if you borrowed $1,000 and you paid $100 in interest, the finance charge would be $100. The total installment price is going to be the sum of all the monthly payments and the down payment, if any. So, for example, if I bought a car and I put $5,000 down and I paid $250 for 10 months, then my installment price would be the $5,000 plus the $2,500 that I paid monthly. So this car would have cost $7,500, which is your installment price. This table 11.2, which you can find in your textbook, is going to come up over and over and over and over again to be used in a lot of the problems. So familiarize yourself with it. It is a way to calculate your annual percentage rate. It's not always exactly what your credit card discloses, so it's kind of interesting when you go about calculating this. You can also calculate your annual percentage rate by a formula. The formula is the installment payment formula. The formula is the following: M equals, and then next to your M you'll have a giant fraction. In the numerator of your fraction, you'll have P times R over N. And in the denominator of your fraction, you'll have 1 minus the quantity 1 plus R over N raised to the negative NT. Okay, so in this case, M is going to be your monthly installment payment. P is your principal, or the amount that you financed. R is the annual percentage rate as a decimal. N is the number of payments per year. So if you're paying monthly, that would be 12. And T is the number of years that you will have the loan. Okay, so we're going to do this example, and we're going to do it in two different ways. We're going to do it once with the table, and we're going to do it once with the formula so that you can see that you will get the same answer. Okay, Kristen Aiken wishes to purchase new window blinds for her house at a cost of $1,500. The home improvement store has an advertised finance option of no down payment and 6% APR for 24 months. Determine Kristen's monthly payment. Okay, so if you were going to do this with the table, that's the 11.2 table, then you're going to have to do this in two steps. To do this with the table, the first thing you would have to do is you would have to calculate the finance charge. Which is basically the amount of interest that they're going to charge her. Okay, so if you look on page 6 32. You can pull up table 11.2. I put it on here for you. Okay. All right, so if you look at the table, you want to find the finance charge is given per $100 that are financed. So she's financing $1,500. So whatever we find here, we're going to end up having to multiply it by 15. Okay, so if you read the problem, it says that she's doing a 24-month loan. So you'll want to look at the 24-month line. And it says that she has a 6% APR. So you'll want to look at the 6% APR column. And then in the table where those two items meet, the 6% and the 24 months, you'll see that she's going to pay $6.37 for every $100 that she finances. So her finance charge is going to be $6.37 times 15, because she is financing $1,500, not just $100. Okay, so if you do that calculation, $6.37 times 15, her finance charge is going to be $95.55. That's her finance charge. Okay, that's great, but the question wants to know what her monthly payment is going to be. Okay, so next we're going to have to determine her monthly payment. Okay, so to get her monthly payment, we're going to have to do a couple of things. First thing we're going to have to do is find the installment price. So the installment price is the price of the blinds, which is the $1,500, plus the amount of interest she's going to pay, which is $95.55. Okay, so her installment price is $1,595.55. Once you know her installment price, then you are going to divide her installment price by the number of payments. And she is going to make 24 payments because she has a 24-month loan. And so if you divide that out, and remember you're talking about money, so round to 2 decimal places, she will need to pay $66.48 a month. Okay, so you were able to do this completely from the table without using the formula that we talked about on the previous slide. Now, some people prefer to just calculate this with the formula. They don't want to deal with the table. So if you don't want to deal with the table, let me show you Plan B. Okay, Plan B. We want to use the formula. Okay, so the formula says that in order to calculate her monthly payment, we need to first take the principal and multiply that by the rate divided by the number of payments a year, all over 1 minus 1 plus the rate divided by the number of payments a year, raised to the negative number of payments a year times the number of years that she will have the loan. Okay, so in this situation, Kristen is borrowing $1,500, so that would be the p-value. The rate is 6%, and remember that's a rate as a decimal, so we'll have to do 0.06. We'll divide this by the number of annual payments a year. She's paying monthly, so she's going to make 12 payments a year. Then in your denominator, you'll do 1 minus 1 plus the rate, which is 6%, divided by the number of payments per year, raised to the negative n, which is the number of payments a year, times t, which is the number of years. So she's leaving her, taking this loan for 24 months, so that would be 2 years. So then the trick is you have to get this entered into your calculator correctly. When you enter it into your calculator correctly, you should get $66.48. Okay, now I want to show you how to enter this in your calculator. So I'm going to pull up the calculator and do a little video for you so that you can see how I type it in. Okay, so let's get our video in here. Okay, and I have my online calculator up here on my screen. Okay, so if I'm going to enter this in the calculator, first thing I'm going to do is turn my calculator on. Okay, my calculator's on, so I can show you a blow-up version of the screen on the right. Okay, so when I go to type this into my calculator, I can just put my 1500 in, and then in parentheses, I can put my 0.06 divided by 12, and that's my numerator. I don't really need any parentheses around my numerator. I am going to need parentheses around my denominator. So now I'm going to hit the division button. I'm going to open a set of parentheses for my denominator, and my denominator is 1 minus parenthesis 1 plus your rate, which is 0.06 divided by 12. Close your parentheses, and then you are going to raise that to the negative 12 times 2. I'm going to close my parentheses for my exponent, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, and there you go. There's your 66.48. Okay, let's look at another example. Similar type of problem, but you're still working with APR, but this time they didn't tell you the APR. Okay, Jan is purchasing a boat for $25,000, including taxes. Jan decides to make a $5,000 down payment and finance the balance, which is $20,000, through her bank. The loan officer informs her that her monthly payment will be $410.33 for 60 months. Question A, determine the finance charge. Okay, so that's actually not all that difficult. The finance charge is just going to be the amount of interest, or the amount of the monthly payments plus her down payment. So her finance charge is going to include the $5,000 down payment, plus it's going to be her monthly payment, which is $410.33, and she needs to make that 60 times. So you'll have to multiply that by 60. You can type it into your calculator just like that. Her total installment price is $29,619.80. Now, her finance charge is the amount of interest that she's paying. So to get the finance charge, you need to take the total payments that she made, which is $29,619.80, and you need to deduct the price of the boat. The price of the boat was $25,000. So that means she is going to pay $4,619.80 in interest. That is her finance charge, which is the amount of interest she pays. Now the second question asks you to determine her APR. You can do the APR with a formula if you want. And you're eventually going to have to use a table in order to get your final answer. So to get her APR, you're going to have to take her finance charge, which was $4,619.80, and you're going to have to divide that by the amount she financed. She financed $20,000. And keep in mind, usually we give rates as percentages, so we're going to need to multiply this by 100. When you pop that in your calculator, you're going to get $23.10. Now, that means for every $100 that she borrowed, she is going to pay $23.10 in interest. So we want to figure out what that APR is. So in order to do that, we're going to have to bring up table 11.2. So I've got it here for you. Oops. Let me erase that line. Let me get the table up here for you. It's not wanting to work. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so let's look at this table. So when we look at the table, we are going to have to look for the 60 on the left-hand side. And we're looking for the 60 because that's the number of payments that she's going to make. So she's making 60 payments. And then her payment or her finance charge per $100 was $23.10. So we scroll over until we find the $23.10. Sometimes you won't land exactly on it. You'll have to just get as close as you can. And then you're going to have to look at the top of the column to get her APR. For this loan, she has an APR of 8.5%. So that would be her APR for this situation. I think these are some of the most challenging questions, so I would probably recommend that you print off that table 11.2 and have it ready for your homework and your tests. Okay. When you pay back installment loans, you do have the option of paying back your installment loan early. When you pay off the loan early, you do not have to pay the entire finance charge, which would be the charge if you kept it for the entire amount of time. So when you do this, you're going to get a reduction in your finance charge. The reduction in your finance charge is called the unearned interest. Okay, so this will be the break you get for paying it off early. There are two methods to determine the finance charge when you pay an installment loan back early. You can use the actuarial method, which is what we're going to do today, and that it makes use of the APR tables. Or there's what's called the rule of 78. This does not use the APR table, and it is actually outlawed in most of the United States. So we're not even going to cover this method. If you are interested in what the rule of 78 is, you can find it in your textbook on page 635. The actuarial method to calculate unearned interest is a little formula. The formula is U equals N times P times V divided by 100 plus V. Okay, U is the unearned interest amount, so that's the discount you're going to get for paying back the amount early. N is the number of remaining monthly payments, so if you paid the loan back 6 months early, N would be 6. P is the amount of the monthly payment, and V is the value from the APR table of values for the number of remaining payments. So again, we'll have to look at that table 11.2. Okay, so let's check out an example. Okay, Tino Garcia borrowed $9,800 to purchase a classic 1966 Ford Mustang. The APR is 7.5%, and there are 48 payments of $237. Instead of making his 30th payment of his 48th payment loan, Tino wishes to pay his remaining balance and terminate the loan. Use the actuarial method to determine how much interest Tino will save, the unearned interest U, by repaying the loan early. Okay, so the formula for unearned interest is U equals N times P times V divided by 100 plus V. Okay, and U is what we're solving for, so we won't be able to fill that in until the very end. Okay, so in this situation, he was supposed to make 48 payments. He is on his 30th payment, and he wants to pay the whole thing off. So that means there are 18 payments left. So that would be your N amount. Okay. The P is the amount of the monthly payment. Tino has a monthly payment of $237, so that would be your P. And then the v we're going to have to find from the table, and that goes in both the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so let's pull up our table 11.2 and check it out. Okay, so what we're going to have to look at here is we're going to have to look at the number of payments that are left. We have 18 payments that are left, so we're going to have to use that row. And we're going to have to look at the APR column. It said in the problem that he had a 7.5% APR. So if we look at the 18th row and the 7.5 column, we are going to find that his V value is 6.04. And we're going to put that in both the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to get this out of here. I'm going to send the table away so we have some room. So we'll put the 6.04 from the table in the top and in the bottom. Now when you type this in your calculator, you do need to be careful. Make sure when you type it in your calculator that you do put parentheses around your denominator, or your calculator will give you the wrong answer. So the unearned interest is $242.99. So that's how much he's going to save in interest by paying the loan back early. Now question B, what is the total amount due to pay the loan early on the day he makes his final payment? Okay, well remember his payment was $237, and he is needing to make 18 payments because he's wanting to pay it in month 30 instead of month 48. So let's use our calculator and multiply 18 times 237, and you'll find that that is $4,266. Now he's going to get a discount because he gets to save the money from paying it early. And we just found that his discount was going to be $242.99. Okay, so we'll subtract that, which will be $4,023.01. Now, that's how much the balance will be, but that does not include the 30th payment. That is for everything from 31 up to 48. So you're going to have to add back the 30th payment because he still has to pay the full interest on the 30th payment. So he will actually need to write a check for $4,260.01 to pay off his loan early. So the second type of loan that we talked about is called the open-ended installment loan. The most common application you'll see is credit cards. So usually when you have credit cards, they'll give you an itemized statement. They'll list all of your purchases or your cash advances. Usually your purchases and cash advances do have different rates. Sometimes they'll list you a daily rate, and sometimes they'll list you an APR, which is an annual percentage rate. Typically, your credit card monthly statement is going to include the balance at the beginning of the period, the balance at the end of the period after you've made payments and purchased more items. It will include all of the transactions that happened during the period. It'll tell you when the closing date of the statement was. It'll tell you when your payment is due, and it'll tell you the minimum amount that you are required to pay. When you make purchases, you do not pay finance charges right away. As long as you do not have a balance on your credit card, there is no finance charge due unless you go over the grace period. The grace period is usually 20 to 25 days to pay that charge off. If you go over that amount, then you usually start accruing interest at that point. If you do cash advances on your credit card, that's usually a different situation. There's typically no grace period, and they will start charging you interest immediately, like the same day you make the cash advance. Many lending institutions will use what's called the average daily balance in order to calculate your finance charge. They think it's the most fair for you so that you aren't paying interest on like the entire balance, but just the balance for the amount of time that you had it. It is quite complex to calculate, so that's what we're going to work on for our next example. Okay, so I have an example here for you. It says the balance on Min's credit card account on July 1st, which is the billing date, was $375.80. The following transactions occurred in the month of July. On July 5th, there was a payment made of $150. On July 10th, they went to the toy store and charged $74.35. On July 18th, they went to a garage and charged $123.50. And on July 28th, they went to a restaurant and charged $42.50. All right. The question is, determine the average daily balance for the billing period. Okay, so when you do this, it's going to require a little bit of work on your part. Okay, so the first thing you will have to do is you're going to have to start with the opening balance. The opening balance was on July 1st, and they told us, we can pull up the details here. They told us that he had an opening balance of $375.80. So that's your opening balance, okay? Now, on July 5th, he made a payment, okay? So when you make a payment, that is going to reduce your balance. So we started at $375.80. We can deduct away $150, which means his new balance on July 5th is $225.80. Okay? Now, on July 10th, he made a charge. So you need to take your new balance of $225.80, and we're going to have to increase that by the charge amount, which was $74.35. So if you add those two numbers together, his balance now is $300.15. On July 18th, he made another charge. So we're going to need to increase the $300.15 by $123.50, which brings his balance up to $423.65. And then on July 28th, he made an additional charge. They went out to a restaurant. So you need to take your $423.65 and increase it by what they spent at the restaurant. So his new balance is now up to $466.15, which that's all great and helpful and everything, but that's not what the question asked. The question asked, determine the average daily balance. Right now we just have the balance, and that's all we have. Okay, so to get our average daily balance, the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to count the number of days that the balance was the same and did not change. Okay, so, we started at $375.80. How many days was it that balance? Well, it was that balance from July 1st until we got to July 5th. So that means 4 days had passed at that price. Okay? Now, then he made a charge. Okay, well, he made a charge on July 5th, and then he had no more activity until July 10th. So from July 5th to July 10th, how many days passed? That is 5 days. Then he had the same balance from July 10th to July 18th, so that means 8 days passed there. He had the same balance from July 18th to July 28th, so 10 days passed there. He had the same balance from July 28th until the end of the month. Well, July has 31 days, so that means 4 more days passed by with the same balance there. Because if you count, you have 28, 29, 30, 31, so that's 4 days. Okay, so now what we'll have to do is we're going to have to multiply each of those. We're going to have to multiply 375.80 times 4, 225.80 times 5, 315 times 8, 423.65 times 10, 466.15 times 4, and then you'll have to add all of those together after you multiply them all out. So if I multiply each of those items, and if I add them all together, I will get a total of $11,134.50. Now, in order to make this an average daily balance, you're going to have to take that amount and divide it by the number of days in the month, and there are 31 days in the month. So if you take $11,134.50 and divide it by 31 days in the month, you will get your average daily balance, which is $359.18. Now there's a second part to this question. The second part to this question asks to determine the finance charge to be paid on August 1st, which is Min's next billing date. Assume that the interest rate is 1.3% per month. Okay, so in order to calculate the finance charge, that's just the amount of interest that Min is going to have to pay. You need to take your average daily balance, which we just found, was $359.18, and you need to multiply that by the interest rate as a decimal. 1.3% as a decimal is 0.013. You need to multiply that by the number of months, and that is 1 month. And that means that next month, Min is going to owe $4.67 in interest. Last, determine the balance due on August 1st. So when you went through and you looked at your table and you found the balance at the end of the month, you found it to be $466.15. Now you will have to add the finance charge that you just calculated, which is $4.67, which means that at the end of the month, Min will have a bill of $470.82. Now, because this is a credit card, he doesn't have to pay all of that. He'll have to pay the minimum payment, but that is how much the bill will be.